Al, what
Yes.
if you were an old man
I sometimes feel like an old man.
and you decided to go on a journey,
Sounds fun.
and then years later, some kids found out about it and tried to investigate exactly what really happened, and they
Is-
zoomed in very creepily at times.
God. I wasn't sure where you were going at first, and now I do. I don't know what I would do. Suffer, scream, maybe?
That's a good answer.
Yay.
There you go. Hello, welcome to this week's episode of the Season Language Checkup OVA. It's a podcast where we have conversations about video games, anime, and manga. Hello, I'm Jared, joined as always by Doc, Al, and Ladium.
Hello.
And we've got a set of two things ready to talk about today.
Hmm.
One that we have talked about at length previously,
Yes, I don't remember what
and then
episode number it is, though.
it was some time ago,
It was
like last year probably. Um,
um, who knows?
and also a game that Al was playing, and I thought had co-op, and then I was like, oh, we can play this co-op, and then it was like, oh no, never mind, it's local co-op, so get bent.
Yeah, but we
But
still
we
played
played
it
it
anyway.
anyways. So that's what we are here to discuss today, as we lead up into the road to.
Episode 44.
I literally just loaded that page up.
Nice.
44. So that was almost 2 years ago. It was over 2 years ago. Excuse me.
We are an old man's journey now.
We are. You've gone on an old man's journey with us.
Oof.
So yeah, let's talk about an old man's journey.
All right, let's talk about old man's journey. So I did the what is it? Xbox Games Pass? Is that what it's called?
Mm-hmm.
And I was looking at the games that were there, and you were looking for co-op games. So I was like, this game looks really pretty.
You're
I'm
like,
going
man, we should play all these Halo games.
to
I was like, no, Al,
get
we
bent.
can't. There's too many.
No, the only
We
one
can
you
only play Halo Wars.
I would say the only one you would want is Reach.
I mean, that's coming out later this year, so.
Um, so yeah, I was looking through it and I was like, oh man, this game looks really pretty. And so I added it to the things of like, hey, I'm gonna play this with my Xbox Game Pass. Um, and I was
That's
playing
how it
it.
works.
I mean, it kind of did. It was like I have to click the thingy, and it's like, all right, we'll prepare this game for you.
Yeah. Xbox Game Pass, it's a remarkable deal.
Right now, it is, yes.
Like that is a service that feels like you're ripping people off.
I I still have feelings on it, but for now, it lets me play as an old man, and I'm okay with that for now. Um, so yeah, I like clicked on it and I started playing it. I was like, wow, this is beautiful. And I realized quickly that it's like a non-dialogue game that like doesn't even have a tutorial. It's just you're an old man, you have a stick and you have a bag, let's go. You
Mm-hmm.
you get a letter at the beginning.
Which it's very evident that this was a mobile game first.
Yes, it is very evident.
Which that initially did come out in like May of 2017 on mobile and on PC as well. And then came to consoles last year on Switch in 2018, and then came in PS4 in May of 2018, and then came to Xbox this year. So
Um,
this
yeah,
game is out places everywhere.
it definitely is clear it was mobile first,
Mm-hmm. Like
especially
you
when
hit
you
the
look at the
pause
video.
button and like it's just like, oh, this is very much like a touchscreen interface, isn't it? And you're like, hmm. And like
Hmm.
even just like the way you play the game and like you have like a cursor and everything. It's like you touch to move the old man and everything, and how you manipulate the terrain and everything. Like it's very much like, oh, if this had touchscreen controls, like it would make a ton of sense.
And I guess we should talk about how the mechanics work is that you have to navigate the old man through a bunch of different terrain. and that involves like moving up and down hills and connecting things. And I was telling you while we were playing this that would be terrifying for me if I were just like standing there trying to go on this journey and like the land starts moving behind me.
Or you're just like one of the random passerbyers that you run across in this journey, and they're just like, why does the land keep moving up and down? Oh God.
Or like there's the part where there's a train and like none of the train tracks are actually connected. And I'm like, this
Mm.
is so dangerous. Who designs a train track like this?
Sorry, we must stop the train. The tracks have not been connected yet. We are waiting for them to snap back into place.
It was so weird. I'm like, all right, cool, I guess. Like there's a level of surrealness to the whole thing anyway, but
Mm-hmm.
that's the gist of how you get through the game is you navigate the old man through the terrain by moving the terrain and connecting points and making him fall down waterfalls a lot.
He does fall down a lot of waterfalls for an old man.
Which I feel kind of bad. I'm like, man, he's gonna break a hip or something.
He did not listen and hear about not going and chasing waterfalls.
Oh my god. I know from a fact that if you chase waterfalls, you break your ass.
It's true.
Yep. I will no longer do that because I cracked my tailbone. I
See,
literally broke my ass chasing waterfalls.
we are a service. We're providing a service to all of you and telling you, hey, don't go chasing waterfalls. You break your butt.
You'll break your butt. Like I said,
You'll get him another crack there.
that's what I was saying when I first like found out I got the phone call and I went to my friend Alex's office and was like, the jokes write themselves. I have a cracked tailbone. I'm like, oh my god. But my butt has since healed. And now I'm sure this old man's butt is also broken. But you know, they don't really talk about that. But as you move through the game, like he sits on benches and you get kind of the backstory of what's happened with him. There are a lot of boats.
It's a lot of boats. I mean, this is they clearly lay out in the backstory that they show off throughout, like kind of in between each little puzzle section. They're like, this dude really liked boats.
Yeah, he was a very nautical man instead of a rambling man. He was a nautical man.
That's a good way to describe him.
He's a nautical man. He's like, hey, there's this. He was like in the Navy, and he meets this like hot redheaded lady, and then he boinks her, and then they have a kid.
And the kid's like, I got a boat.
Well, they did get married at one point. I should probably clarify that.
Look at my toy boat.
And Dad's like looking out the window, like looking at the boats, like, God, I want that boat. And eventually he leaves to go on his boat adventure, and like you keep getting all this flashback stuff about like where he has been this whole time as a man.
Mm-hmm.
And it does involve a lot of boats.
A lot of boats.
So there are a lot of different sections in this. Like you go through like a village, and then you go to a hotel. You go through a lot of like countryside, you go through a lot of waterfalls. You go through the train section, you go through a truck section where you almost get run over, and it's terrifying.
That happens multiple times.
It does. And then you have several boat sections, and then there's one section that is really interesting to me that I've been thinking about since we played it. That I'm like, what does this actually mean? And I still haven't figured out what it means. Like,
you're right. What do those sheep mean?
Those sheep are evil.
Jerks.
Evil sheep.
Like, no, you do not get to pass.
You shall
you can't
not
go
pass. Anywhere. God, at least the frogs, you could just touch them and they'd make froggy sounds. And which is funny. While you were playing it, we were playing on voice chat, and at first you were yelling about doggos, and then eventually you started yelling about frogos, and I was like, I never thought about frogos as a term before, and I like it a lot.
I was yelling about kitties.
Kitties! The kitty was on the bench.
And then your kitties were probably like, what is happening? We're here. Hello.
Well, and the funny part about that is that you're like, oh, I'm going to sit on this bench with a kitty. And then you're like, oh, the kitty is butthole. Cat experience. Like, that's what they do. They just show you their butts all the time.
Like, look at my butt.
Look at my butt. I'm
Look at
like,
that hole.
I really don't want to look at your butt, but thank you. I appreciate it anyway.
Are you proud of me?
I am very proud of you. Um, but yeah, you can like click on people and get stories and um achievements, not trophies.
It's so weird.
I keep forgetting.
Same. Like, and this I was someone who was very much in the Xbox 360 ecosystem and very much into finding achievements and all that stuff. And it's like the 5 years or so that I've been using a PS4, like all that's just gone.
Yeah, see, that's the thing is that when last gen I played more 360 than I did anything.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I did a lot of Wii too, but and then Wii U, but I played a lot of 360 over the PS3. And then this time I switched, I play a lot more PS4, and I was like, how do I Xbox?
It's always fun whenever we boot up our Xboxes and it's like, how many patches does this thing need this time?
Well, one thing that I realized, and this is completely unrelated to Old Man's Journey, but it's related to my journey, is that
Al's journey.
Is that when I started playing with the Xbox again, I'm like, oh right, I don't like the Xbox controller.
It's fine. I think also as well that like they've made better versions of this controller.
Mm-hmm.
Like that Elite controller is supposed to be like really good. So
Well, can I clarify my reasoning?
yeah,
I have tiny hands.
you do.
It's not the Duke, but the fact that it's
What if it was?
still very. God, I hated the Duke. I had the Duke. Can you imagine? I had these tiny, tiny hands, and I had to use the Duke.
I feel like if I never really used an original Xbox, so like I missed out on the Duke and everything. I feel like I would have loved the Duke.
You probably would have loved the Duke. I knew a lot
like
of people who loved the Duke.
I hated the DualShock before they came out with the DualShock 4 because the DualShock was so tiny.
Mm-hmm. But see, I like it a lot. And so the issue that I am having now is that like we're trying to play a different game. My hands can't wrap to where it needs to go to actually play the games very well. Like it's not comfortable because my hands are so small and that the sides are so thick. It's very upsetting.
Yeah. Here is something that a lot of people clearly did not say when it was first unveiled. I was very excited for the PlayStation 3 Boomerang controller.
I mean, it looked cool.
I was like, this is a controller that looks like it actually accommodates someone with big hands.
It looked cool, but
and then they're like, "Oh, never mind. We're shelving that design and going back with the DualShock." And I was like, "Ugh," which the DualShock 3 sucks.
It does.
You could probably snap that thing in half if you gave it enough pressure. But yeah, I think the Xbox One controller is fine. I think in terms of it comparing it to like the 360 controller, it's a bit of a downgrade.
Mm-hmm.
But like there's enough like interesting things I think they do internally with like like motion or rumble and like the triggers and all that sort of stuff. Like that stuff's cool, but I can totally see how like this thing would not be a fun controller to have in your hands for a long time if you don't have if you have tinier hands.
When you have tiny hands, yeah. So I was playing through this and I was like, oh man, okay. So it's already uncomfortable. I'm like, this isn't gonna be great. But I got through this because it's not a very long game. I think we played like 2 hours maybe.
Basically.
But then when I started playing the other game that we're talking about, not today, but eventually maybe, I was like, oh God, I can't hit these triggers and these buttons. What am I doing? It was terrible.
I would be curious to see how you would feel about the Switch Pro controller.
I don't have
they're because compared to the Xbox One controller, they're kind of relatively the same size.
Are they?
I think basically the only thing is that like the Switch Pro controller is thinner, like it's not as thick with 2 C's. So I think that's like the big difference between the two. But like in terms of like length and width, they're pretty similar.
I think the perfect controller for me is the Joy-Cons when they're in a like dock, like not the dock, but when they're
no.
when they're in the slidey thing.
Oh no,
that's the best one for me.
That thing is too tiny.
It's
too
perfect.
Tiny.
It's perfect. So anyway, it was hard for me to like adjust back to this controller, and this was a pretty good game to like try and get back into that. Because it's really just like, hey, you're pressing one button.
You're moving the left stick and then you're pressing A lot. That's basically it.
um, so yeah, in this game, you have this man who's very nautical, and at one point he's like, "All right, I can't deal with this anymore," and he leaves and he goes on like boating adventures. He leaves his family, and at one point he gets real sad and he decides to go back, and his like house is foreclosed.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I was like, "Man, his house is run down." You're like, "Oh, it's foreclosed." Like, oh, I didn't see that part. um, and so like he's kind of just sad.
He's a sad old man.
Um, like I said, I've been thinking about that one underwater scene so much though, and like what that could possibly mean. Because you throw the old man down a big waterfall, and then like the next scene of it,
Like, get out of here.
this game was a lot of me and you screaming like, "Go this way, old man!" Like we're just yelling at this old man so terribly. But yeah, you throw him down the waterfall, and like the next scene of it is just like him underwater with like a
Mm-hmm.
bunch of like broken sunken ships and
Truck.
a truck and a locked door, and I'm like,
Yeah.
what is happening right now? And I haven't been able to figure out, like, the closest that I could come up with in thinking about it is that like, because it's one of the last things you see before he like gets to the end area,
Before he completes his journey.
before he completes his journey, yes, is that maybe this is like him realizing that like his boat dreams were not everything that he had hoped that they would be.
Hmm.
And so like the locked door is him like coming to that realization of like, oh right, you know, I tried to get away, I tried to go on these boat adventures and escape, and it actually was detrimental to me. Like that's the only thing I really come up with. Because at first I thought he was dead.
Rip old man.
I mean, we did throw him down a waterfall.
It's true. Like, I mean, that's. I feel like that's the most like just on the nose allegory that you could come up with. Like, oh, the old man navigates through the waters and then finds his way out. It's about life and death.
Yeah.
And like clearly, you can easily kind of make that connection. But I really like yours in terms of like,
It's kind of like a grass is greener on the other side type thing of like
yeah,
he
and just
thought
like
that that would be his happiness, and it wasn't.
and like I think just with how there, like you said, there's a lot of just like broken down boat parts you get to like clear out of the way to even
To get
continue
to
on
that
and all that
door.
stuff. Like that makes a lot of sense of like was all of these boating adventures and that freedom of the ocean life and whatever, like was that worth destroying my relationships with my family and all that sort of stuff? Like that's a very good and interesting way to look at that.
Like I said, it's the only thing I can come up with that like makes sense to me and how I would read this game.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and I like it. I think that that's a good way to go about it, especially with how the game ends. Which I realize that I'm just like flying through this, but there's really not that much to the
It's
game.
very much like you literally the entire game is just going puzzle section, puzzle section, puzzle section. Here's a screen of backstory.
Yeah. Us like yelling at the screen constantly.
Yeah.
But with the game, like it starts out with the postman delivering a letter, and when he finally like sits down at the final bench, he's like at this house, and then he gets up and he goes and he like knocks on the door and he goes in, and then like you see his wife and daughter in there, and his wife is dying,
Mm-hmm.
and so like you realize that okay, the letter was someone telling him like, hey, you need to get here and see her.
You gotta circumvent all of these boats and hills, hot air balloons to get here.
Sheep,
Get rid of all these sheep.
truck, and train tracks and all kinds of crazy things. But like that's the whole thing, is that he's supposed to get there, and he is there for like the moment and all, which is important.
Mm-hmm.
And then him and his daughter like reconcile and go hang out on a boat with their kid, with her kid, so his grandchild. um and so like I said, if you're interpreting that underwater scene as like him realizing that like it was a mistake, or that it wasn't what he thought it was going to be, then like him actually making it to the end is like his kind of reconciliation of that, of like, this wasn't what I really wanted. What I wanted was this all along, was to be with you guys.
Right.
And so he's able to be there for like her passing. And then everybody just turns into a ghost.
Spooky.
Um but yeah, they get on a sailboat.
And they come sail away.
Oh my god. One thing I do want to say about this game is it is beautiful.
Mm-hmm.
It is so pretty. It looks like a children's book. Like the art style of it really, really reminds me of a children's book.
It's a really, really nice art style that like pops out.
The colors are beautiful.
Mm-hmm.
All the character designs also really nice too. Like
Mm-hmm.
everybody has a lot of personality, even though there's no dialogue whatsoever. Pretty cool.
Yeah.
Music was fine. Like there wasn't anything that like stood out as like, wow, it's a really good track, but it was fine. It was enough that like when I got stuck on a puzzle, I didn't want to like murder everybody. And I did get stuck on puzzles.
We both did.
Yeah, it was a lot of us just like sharing screenshots of like, how would you get past this?
And then like having to describe like, oh, I did this, this, and this. Do you understand what I'm saying?
Nope.
Oh no.
But yeah, it was a nice like 2-hour game, and I have no regrets of playing it. We'll put it that way.
There you go.
Do you have any regrets?
I mean, I don't want to look at a sheep now.
You did break the game at one point.
I did break the game actually, yeah.
Yeah, I was kind of impressed.
I got in a spot where I literally couldn't move or interact with anything, and I was just like, uh-oh.
Like
so I just made some boats move, and then I was like, okay, well, I can't really do anything, so
you got to that
let's
tree
try and reset this. He's like, this is my spot now. I'm just going to stand here.
I just live here now.
I live here now. I was like, uh-oh.
I mean, I think the good thing is that like the autosave wasn't that far back, right?
Yeah, it was like a screen or two back, and it was like the very beginning of that section anyway, so it wasn't too difficult as I kind of load back out, load back in, so it wasn't bad.
But yeah, it was a fun game. I'm glad that we played it together though, as opposed to like playing it separately.
Which this game does have local co-op options if you do want to play it with someone else.
How do you think that would work?
I don't know.
I feel like it would be
just
chaos.
Like, just both of you moving the stuff around, or there's two old men. I don't know.
Two old men trying to find their one wife.
I think like one of the way you can do it on Switch is that like each person gets a Joy-Con, all that sort of stuff. So like there's interesting options in that aspect. So
like I said, that feels like it would be chaos knowing the people that I would play with, and it's just feel like, all right, I'm trying to make this a whip. Oh well, the old man can't go there now. Like you would do that, and you know you would.
Oh, 100%.
Like, what were we playing the other day? You murdered me.
What were we playing the other day? Mario? Probably. Oh yeah, Mario. Because yes. I picked you up and just tossed you off a platform.
It's so mean. So yes, you would be the chaotic one there.
That's my job.
You and Loki. That's why you're friends.
Mm-hmm.
Loki's like, why are you talking about me? Don't talk about me.
I have not signed a release to be on this podcast. I'll have my lawyers talk to you.
Oh my god, he doesn't have lawyers. He doesn't even have a job.
Yeah, you know of.
God. The sweet Loki backstory that we all deserve.
It's very good.
Yep. So then last night, I guess after we finished this game and a little bit after, since I had to do some things,
we're very much on the ball.
We're like, what are we gonna do? And then you found out that the live action Hyouka movie is on YouTube in its entirety.
Mm-hmm. Very legal. Very on the up and up.
Super, super legal. And if you listen to episode 44, or if you just know us at all, like we are both like super, super big fans. It's really, really good. We are not going
Fans
to.
of Hyouka, because I think you cut out there at the very end.
There you go. Fans of it. We really like it a lot. Um, and so that was on episode 44 that we talked about that. And so we wanted to see how they would adapt it into a live action movie.
We have in between all of that, like we had previously seen the trailers for this,
Yes.
and the trailers did not give off the best impression
No.
of this film. So we were like,
At all.
But we went in, with not really any big expectations, and just to see exactly what this film was going to be. And especially, I think we were really curious to like how or what are they going to adopt in terms of
like what parts of the story are going to be in this, and also like now that we're more familiar with the main guy who's been in Orange and Diamond is Unbreakable that we've talked about before.
Kento Yamazaki.
There we go. We're like, all right, we know this dude. We know who he is now. We don't know him, but we know who he is now, what he's capable of.
We have seen him in two wildly different kinds of films.
Wildly different.
This performance obviously is way more in line with his performance in Orange, because obviously Hyouka is a very chill, slow-paced type of story. Not the same as Diamond is Unbreakable, but
not as emotional.
Right. But again, I think this dude does a really good job of capturing his performance as Hotaro. Yeah, like he really nails kind of like the essence of that character and everything.
Yeah.
Which he's done in all of his previous performances that we have seen so far.
Yeah, this dude's good.
Mm-hmm.
He's really
like,
good.
It makes sense why he keeps showing up in these kinds of adaptations.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah. Like he's good at what he does. I will give him that.
Mm-hmm. Like I want to go and see like his performances and some of the stuff that like I've seen personal or like other animes I've seen that have been adapted. Like I want to see how he does in Your Lie in April. I want to see how he does in 1 Week Friends.
Yeah,
and then obviously also I'm like very curious to see how he does in Wotakoi.
I want to see that too.
Mm-hmm.
When does that come out?
Next year.
Oh.
I think it's early next year. But again, that's not going to come. That's not going to be available to watch until later in the year. So.
Yeah. Well, I'm really excited about
7th.
that.
Yeah.
Yeah, I can't watch Your Lie in April. I can't do it. So you'll have to just do that without me, unless you can convince me at some point that I can manage through it.
I don't know how they would adapt that story, because that story is also another one that's the anime is like 20-ish episodes. Like how do you narrow that story down into 2 hours?
Yeah, and I mean that's the issue here is that like Hyouka's what, like 22 and a half episodes?
Like 20-ish,
a
little bit over 20. But,
I think it's 22 in an OVA.
And then that's adapting the first 4 books.
Yes.
And 5 and 6 still have nothing's happened with those yet. But
tragically,
this was about what I was expecting to see adapted from this film, which is basically I think like the plot of the first book.
Yeah.
So essentially, you get the whole. If you were watching the anime, this would be about like the first 4 or 5 episodes. It's
like the first big arc.
Yeah. So you get like the whole thing of Hotaro being told to go join the Classics Club, Chitanda being there, and they have to figure out the mystery of the locked door, of how she was able to get in and how he had to unlock the door and everything. Like that's the first big plot thing that becomes relevant. And then after they kind of nail down the club being an actual thing, she comes to Hotaro and asks him to figure out the mystery behind her uncle and why he made her cry when she was younger. And then that sets off like the main A plot basically for the rest of the film. Again, like mostly things that like if you've seen the anime, you know how all these are going to go. Like they don't really do much of a deviation from them. It's just, it's interesting to see how these play out in a live action film compared to the anime, which again, we're comparing the anime, which was made by Kyoto Animation.
Right.
A very great production, and then to this, which is it's a strange production, I would say.
That's putting it lightly. I was going to say that like it's basically the same, but the same if like you are going to be terrified 90% of the time.
The director of these films, Mari Asato, is known mostly for doing horror films.
It
Like
shows.
she did a film in the Grudge series. She did a film adaptation of the video game Fatal Frame.
Really?
Yeah. So like a lot of her like catalog of directorial films is horror, and
It
then she made
shows.
Hyouka.
It shows.
So yeah, like there's a lot of this weird kind of like, not necessarily weird, but like just interesting choices in terms of like how the film is shot, how they like make certain scenes look with the characters and everything. Um, Chitanda is very bizarre in this film. Like they do a lot of like very slow zoom ins on her, and like she'll just like
Hmm.
have like this very,
Creepy grin.
yeah, it just like keeps zooming in. And you're like, ah.
Yeah,
Like,
she kept creeping me out. I'm like, oh god, ugh. And
there are
also,
a lot of scenes in this film that like you if you basically like change the soundtrack and added in like horror sound effects in there, you could easily pass this off as a horror film.
I think we could probably recut it to be a horror film pretty
I
easily.
think you could, yeah.
And it's kind of terrifying that you can do that. The way that they do the zoom ins though, it's really terrifying. And she also doesn't really fit the role either. Um, she is in fact younger than both of us. We have since learned, but
Basically,
she,
the entire cast is.
yeah, they're younger than us, but she just looks so much older than everybody. Well, okay, no, that's a lie, because the one dude looks like he's 40.
So Chitanda looks older than she looks. She's like 25. The dude who they got to play Satoshi also looks much older than
Like
what
neither
you
of
think
them
he
look like
was.
they belong in high school.
Right.
Like at least with Hotaro, he looks like he could be in high school.
Mhm.
He might be an older high schooler than what he's supposed to be, but I could buy him being a high schooler. The
Mhm.
other two, I'm like, no.
These are very much adults playing high school kids.
Yeah, like she's definitely not in high school. He is 40 and has a family and a
Um, it,
minivan.
it's just a weird thing. Like I don't understand. Like if it was just like the way they designed these characters and like had the like they did hair and makeup for them or whatnot that made them just look so much older than you would anticipate. But it was just very bizarre throughout. Um,
Well, and we were talking about like, oh, what would our dream castings be for this? And like,
mhm,
I think we came up with some much better choices for Chitanda anyway.
mhm,
But it's odd casting or odd makeup. I don't know what it is. It's odd is a good way to
mhm.
put it. Um, I just can't get over the fact that he looks so old.
Um, and I wouldn't say like even though like he looks old, he does a bad job of playing Satoshi. Like I think he
Yeah.
does a really good job actually.
Yeah.
Um, like I think everyone's pretty much cast or like they do their characters really well except the lady who does Chitanda because they make Chitanda way more just like forceful and
Hmm.
in a way that's like
She's
does
way
not fit
less
her character.
likable. She's
Yeah,
a
like
lot
basically she
less
like
likable.
anytime she wants to go do something, she just like grips Hotaro's arm in a way that like, oh god, you're gonna have marks on your arm after this.
She
And
like
just like
manhandles him.
she does. It's very bizarre.
It's
Like
it's she. I don't like the way that they characterize her because Chitanda is actually a very likable character,
mhm.
and she's not at all in this.
And
Like
like
she's more
obviously in the source
obnoxious.
material, she does like she's able to get her way to make Hotaro like kind of investigate things that she wants, but she's not doing it in a way where she's like, let me just hang on to you and just drag you throughout this entire school to make you do this.
Yeah, she's not being like overly aggressive. She's definitely not manhandling him, and it's you can tell that like at certain points that he's like, okay, I'm fine with this. Like he's resisting, but he's like not really against it. But like this one, he's saying like, please don't do this to me. Like, why are you doing this? And it's like she's dragging him. Like Jesus, like it makes her very, very unlikable and not at all like her at all.
Right. And also they make Hotaro at times be a
Yeah, just like inexplicably for some reason.
Like, there's a shot, I think, before they get him and Satoshi are going to go to Chitanda's for the whole investigation scene at her house.
Is this the
And, like,
bike part?
he shows up, Satoshi shows up, and Hotaro just kicks his bike.
He does. He kicks his bike. Or then there's the part where they're like trying to investigate the boxes.
Yeah, so, like, they make the table in the club room, like, a piece of wood over boxes. I don't think that's the case in the actual. I don't know if that's like in the books or something, but it's not. I don't think that's the way it is in the anime.
Yeah. They have a real table in the anime.
So they're like, he's like, oh, there's probably in these boxes under this table. He literally shoves Mayaka out of the way, forcefully shoves her out of the way, and then tries to look in all these boxes and everything. It's like, what are you doing?
He like clears off everything on the table, like just does a sweep and then like throws her in the corner. I'm like, what? He wouldn't do that.
No.
It was very aggressive.
Too much energy.
That's really it. It's so out of character for him because that would take too much energy for him.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, I don't know why they decided he was just gonna be a butthole sometimes.
I don't know.
That's not who he is.
I mean, I feel like if you did kind of a surface level reading of Hyouka in general, you could probably kind of see that character in that light.
Yeah, you could interpret him as that if you just like didn't actually pay any attention to it whatsoever.
So like I can see how that could be a thing, but also just like it's very bizarre.
Yeah.
But again, like there's a lot of this movie that it just feels kind of bizarre.
Yeah, it's bizarre. Nice. Yeah, it just felt weird the whole time watching it. And we have to talk about the 360 camera. We have to.
There's a lot of 360 camera shots in this where like, which I think they actually kind of do like an interesting way of having Hotaro
do his
thinking sequences where he's like there when things are happening in his mind and all that sort of stuff. Like that stuff that's actually, you know, a very interesting take that they do on that. But they also have like, they're like, hey, we bought a 360 degree camera. We are going to use this 360 camera. And like, there's a lot of shots of just like how they transition from like what's happening in reality to what's happening in these like thinking investigative sequences of just like spin around and there you are.
Yep. Or it's not a 360 camera shot, but there's the one shot where like the character is walking towards the camera and then has to walk to the side of it so he doesn't run into it.
It's really good. Like usually, you know, you'll see those types of shots where like a character will walk into the camera and basically like they'll usually cut right before they get to the camera and everything to make it so like they're not having to show them moving out of the way of the camera to go forward. But this, they just kept that in. There's like he gets to the camera and then he does a little sidestep and walks around it, even though like there would be no reason for him to sidestep in that scene at all.
The ground is completely clear in his path.
He's just going through the gate and he's just like, we'll try to move around this.
It was really funny.
Oh man.
Oh my god. Another odd choice.
Another odd choice. They one odd choice that we found at the very beginning was that they made the school shoes sneakers.
Yes.
Which I obviously like. We're not very incredibly educated on the footwear of high school students and what they wear in schools, but for the most part, usually what you see in any form of media that involves a high school is that like they're slip-on shoes.
Right.
These were very clearly, you are lacing these up, tying them up, and these are just white sneakers. And like I don't know if like that's actually if there are schools that do that, but I feel like for the most part you see the slip-on, so like that was a very weird choice, and it wasn't something they were even trying to casually hide. Like there were a lot of shots in the very beginning where you just see their shoes, and it's like, oh, that's sneakers.
It's also odd that like they wear their winter uniforms 5 minutes.
And then after, like, for the rest of the movie, up until the very end, they're in their summer uniforms. And then at the very end, they go back to the winter.
There's, like, no explanation whatsoever. Like, you don't know what kind of time is passing through it. It's just like, okay, cool, we just changed uniforms. Like, wait, what? Excuse me? I need some kind of explanation of this. You don't just change uniforms 2 days into the semester.
It's some weird choices.
Yeah. And then there's the one scene of her uncle like walking by very slowly, and they keep using that over and over and
Yeah,
over.
there's multiple times where they will just reuse shots they've already shown
Yeah.
and use them in like their entirety, and it's like, what is happening here?
It's like we literally just saw this 5 minutes ago. Why are we watching it again? Um, because there's like two different shots of him leaving the school, and they reuse those. And then there's the shot of him like walking through the school, and they reuse that one twice or once. So you see it twice. It's like you couldn't film something else for that part.
It's very bizarre as well because like it just feels like padding.
Yeah, it does.
In a way that like this film didn't need.
You could have just had the characters talking at that point, like
or just
around the table.
Do another shot.
That too, but I mean, if you are in need of something, like just have the like 4 kids sitting around the table talking. That's fine. Yeah. No one would be upset by that.
Yeah. That's the kind of pacing you would expect from the story.
Yeah. Yeah, it was weird. It was very weird.
So it's a good way to just describe, I think, this film in general. It's weird. Like I don't think it's bad. Like it is an adaptation of Hyouka. Like it gets all the key points across in a way that, you know, makes sense. It basically tells those first little plot points that you would get in the anime in the first book. Like that's all there.
Yeah.
In a way that, you know, it makes sense and everything.
Except
it's
for
just
the, like Hotaro being a butthole and Chitana
and some like the weird characterization issues aside, but like I think as a whole it's a film that's weirdly shot and directed.
Yeah, I think that it had potential to be a really good adaptation, but it missed the mark a bit. The fact that I was more creeped out by it than like anything else is not a great sign, especially with how much I love the anime.
Right.
Like I would definitely put this in like my top 3 anime of all time that I love, whatever. Yeah, I would. So I was really excited about this. I'm like, all right, let's watch this live action version. But like we had seen screenshots of it, like you said at the beginning. Like we had seen screenshots. So I was a little like, so when you told me we were gonna watch it last night, I was like, you know what? Let's just do this thing.
I mean, it's kind of how I felt as well. It's like I am curious to see how this adaptation actually is, considering, you know, the trailer did not look great.
Now I want to recut it as a horror film.
I bet you could.
I bet I could too.
100% bet you could. So yeah, it's a bizarre film.
I also thought I was gonna like make you die at one point while we were watching it because I kept talking about her Steven Tyler mouth.
God.
It's a large mouth with a lot of teeth.
Let's have you guess. Have a guess.
Okay.
How much did this film make at the box office in Japan?
Oh, Jesus Christ.
Now you got that. So this would be in yen, obviously. So you can inflate your number a bit.
Inflate my number a bit.
Yeah. So like if you thought like, oh, it made 10,000, that would be what? Add 2 zeros as 1 million.
How much do movies usually make? They're like usually in millions, aren't they?
Well, over here, yeah. If it's a big film per se.
Which I don't know if this was a big film, but I would imagine that it would make like something.
Right. It did make something.
Do I know what the budget was?
No. I don't think this has budget numbers. It just has box office number.
So if I say like 25 mil US, what would that be in?
25 million would be 2 billion.
Jesus, that's a lot. How bad of an overshot is that?
That's a big overshot.
Did it make like less than like US 10 million?
Yes.
Jesus, this was a not great success. Um, did it make less than US 1 million?
No.
All right. Well, we're between 1 and 10.
It's a big wide gap there you got there for you.
6,
Nope. Too high.
4,
Too high.
2,
Too high.
1.5.
Too high.
What the heck? What is it?
It made 130 million yen, equivalent to 1.3 million.
Wow. Man.
Not great. Let's see if we can put that in perspective here. So the JoJo movie,
Mhm.
Diamond is Unbreakable, made 2.1 million. That's in US dollars, I would assume.
Right.
So obviously that was a little bit bigger. Do we have numbers on the Orange movie? The Orange movie made 28.2 million US dollars.
Wow.
So this didn't do great.
No, it did not. Probably because it's freaking creepy.
Because it's freaking creepy.
I think it's freaking creepy. It's very, very upsetting.
To put this even in more perspective, the film adaptation of One Week Friends, which is a lesser known anime and manga in general, made 5.7 million US dollars.
Wow. So what the heck happened?
I think just this thing bombed. There are no indications that they're going to make a sequel to this at all, and I would assume so, considering how little money they made.
I mean, if the Diamond is Unbreakable film can't get a sequel,
and that made almost $1 million more.
Yeah.
Yeah, I would assume as well that they're probably not going to make this thing's not going to get off the ground at all.
Welp.
So yeah,
we watched a film.
We did watch a film. This Japanese website that Wikipedia links to has a rating on the film at 2.6 stars.
Out of
5.
Oof.
So average.
I bet this movie would be really fascinating if we like recut the music and all the sound effects. I'd be interested in doing that. I don't have time.
Right. I don't have the video skills to do that, but
it'd be amazing though. Anyway, at least the main kid did a good job.
Yeah, totally.
He was.
I think for the most part, the cast was fine.
I still think Chitano was. But
yeah, that's fair.
The acting for the rest of them was fine. And that might have just been they gave her really bad direction on how Chitanda should be.
Totally, that could easily be one of the reasons why this thing is entirely bizarre as it is. But if you are at all curious about Hyouka, this is not the thing to start off with, or
no, please
maybe
don't
even really watch.
Yeah, please don't.
Watch the anime. Go find the novels if you can. And then if you're really curious, you can check this out. Like I said, it's fine. It's not bad. It's just weird.
It's so weird. If you really, really like 360 cameras, this is for you.
And I feel like we've kind of run the gambit so far in terms of like our sample size of live action adaptations, where like the Orange one was very faithful. And we really enjoyed it. The JoJo one kind of goes off in some different directions, but it was still enjoyable.
Yeah.
And then this one's just weird.
It's so weird.
Like I feel like that's kind of like the thing you're gonna get with adaptations in general, where like you'll find ones that are like really good and they follow the source material extremely well. Ones that have to kind of go off in their own direction because of various reasons in terms of like story and all that sort of stuff. And then ones that are just going to be like, they did a good job of adapting the story and everything, but everything else kind of surrounding it is just not that great and strange. And like, was this really necessary?
I don't know, man. I don't know.
Yeah.
That's really all I have to say.
Yeah. I feel like
Kick your friend's bike.
Don't kick your friend's bikes or just toss people off a table.
I'd be so upset if I got tossed like that. God. He just flung her.
Yoink.
God. Anyway, we watched this film.
We watched this film.
We did the thing.
There you go. We did the thing.
We also directed an old man on his journey.
We did.
And he didn't die.
But he got on a lot of boats.
He got on a lot of boats. And sheep suck.
It's true. Well, I think that's going to wrap this episode up. A little bit of a shorter episode, but it is what it is.
Didn't you say that it's the anniversary of the Shush Shush Man episode, though? I think that's worth noting.
It is indeed the anniversary of the Shush Shush Man.
It's worth noting.
So yes, 1 year ago we talked about the hashtag worst game of 20. Well, the presenter of worst game of 2018.
The presenter of, yes.
And that was The Quiet Man. So if you want to go back and listen to that for comedic purposes, go ahead. Just remember 1 year ago, that was what we were spending our time doing.
Mm-hmm.
Playing that game more than once. Too many times, because that game also like kept bugging out at the very end.
God.
What a nightmare.
I can't. Oh man, what a Anyway, we did that so that you guys didn't have to.
Exactly.
And this is the 1 year anniversary of that. So if you're getting a little nostalgic, you can listen to this episode and then go back and listen to the Shush Shush Man.
There you go.
Mm-hmm. Think about what you're doing with your life. Not playing Quiet Man twice.
It's a good thing to do.
Think about what you're doing with your life, or not play the Quiet Man twice.
Not play the Quiet Man more than once. Yeah. But hello, yeah. Hey, if you would like more from us, go to seasonlanguagecheckup.com or sac.cool is where you can find past episodes of our podcast and other podcasts like Season Language Check and Jared Now Watch. You can also find columns and reviews on the site as well. If you'd like more from Ann Ladium, go to annladium.com. She's got columns and reviews. You can follow us on Twitter, twitter.com/animecheckup. That's where we do Twitter. And you can support us on Patreon. Patreon.com/anime or SACOVA. Wrong one.
Whoops.
You can support us there, and you could like spend like $3, the equivalent of buying yourself a slice of pizza. You could buy us a slice of pizza and support your favorite dumb podcast.
Oh, I love pizza so much.
There you go. That's gonna be our new Patreon tagline. Buy us a slice of pizza.
I would love
at patreon.com/SACOVA.
Please buy me pizza.
Next week is our final week of uncertainty before we hit December, and we have a full month of certainty.
Ooh, that's gonna be terrifying.
Should we give the folks a little preview of what they should be expecting in the month of December?
Yeah, why the heck not?
So we have 4 episodes hitting you all throughout the month of December. Starting with, actually, I need to pull it up to get the right order, but it's not that big of a deal. December 7th, I believe, is going to be a very interesting episode. One we're going to have to do some research for.
Oof.
Because we need to look at, what were the best games of the last decade? Because the decade's ending.
Yep.
So we're going to try and compile a list singular lists and maybe try and come together and form our own dual list if that's possible. We'll figure that out by the time that episode comes up. But yeah, we're gonna try and figure out the best games of the decade because that's gonna be fun.
Yeah.
December 14th will be our very annual preview episode of the upcoming year. So we'll take a look at stuff's coming out in 2020. Again, because of course the way this happens and the way our podcast lines up, we will probably miss all of the announcement that happens on the Game Awards because that is happening on Thursday, and we're probably not going to wait until after that show happens to record our podcast. So
probably not.
that's just the way this thing works. It literally happens every year.
Every year.
December 21st, our annual Christmas episode where we talk about something that is Christmas related. And the past 2 years have been movies we've talked about.
Mm-hmm.
This year we're heading into the realm of video games.
Da-da-dum.
To play a game by someone that Al hates.
I cannot believe I've agreed to this. I can't believe I agreed to this.
And then... Sorry, were you going to say something?
No, I'm just thinking, like, what am I... Why have I... But you know what?
Because we're going to make a fun time out of it.
I accept my fate.
And then finally, on December 28th, we will determine the 2019 Game of the Year.
Dun, dun, dun.
So that is a look ahead to seeing what's going to happen in the month of December. But next week, we'll have something. I don't know. I have an idea. I just need to figure out how to do it.
Oh, do you?
Yeah, I figured it'd be a nice chill thing we could do, and it's not entirely long.
Neato.
So we'll probably do that, and then we'll go through December, and then we'll be ready for the next year, where we'll probably talk about some games starting off. So look forward to all of that coming up in the near future for all of y'all.
All y'all.
And until then, don't let people creepily zoom in on your face.